Hello, I'm Mayeni Jones. Welcome to a special end-of-year edition of Focus on Africa, looking back at some of the best work from our reporters in 2016. Coming up, we'll be in Zanzibar to find out what's behind the success of its program to eliminate malaria. We'll also travel on the first fully electrified train service in sub-Saharan Africa. And we'll hear performance poetry from the Nigerian diaspora.
His culture is celebrated with every turn he takes, but once in a while, he's reminded that this is not home.
Thank you for joining us for this special edition of Focus on Africa on BBC World News. Now, in June, we revealed that some African Union soldiers serving in Somalia had not received their deployment payments for at least 6 months. The news broke at a time when the internationally backed AU force AMISOM was under attack from Al-Shabaab militants. Catherine Bioranga has this report from Somalia.
The beauty and richness of Somalia can easily be forgotten. It's been at war for decades, and some of the land below is controlled by the Islamist group Al-Shabaab. On the ground, African Union soldiers are fighting to help the government take control. But some of the soldiers we spoke to say that while they've received their salaries at home, they have not received the much larger AMISOM payments since November. It's especially alarming when you consider the challenges they face in small towns like Koriole.
This is a built-up area. You have civilians, and all of them are running different businesses, and some of the Al-Shabaab are dressed like them.
A source at the European Union, which funds the troops' allowances, has told us that they blocked the AU from releasing the money because of accounting issues. But we have learned that the EU has just allowed distributions for the period up to the end of November 2015 and agreed a new deal going forward. Despite this, there are still soldiers who have not received full payments.
What we do to compensate for this is to sensitize these soldiers. Your money is available. We cannot release it because 2, 3, 4, 5 papers are missing. These papers are on their way. The money is also on its way. Once it comes, you get it.
The morale of AMISOM soldiers is crucial, now at a time when they're coming under attack from Al-Shabaab. Earlier this month, Ethiopian soldiers repelled hundreds of gunmen who attacked this base. A much-needed victory for these troops. But over the past year, other countries' positions have suffered deadly incursions. The question is, how long will this mission continue? Uganda, the biggest troop-contributing country, has talked of pulling its soldiers out, and the European Union has reduced its funding for the mission. Somali national forces are not ready to go it alone yet. But some think it's time for the way AMISOM works to change.
A few years ago, we didn't have any Somali national army. The challenge now, after 9 years, is try to see how AMISOM can partner far more the Somalis, the national army, the regional forces. So we're very much at the crossroads.
The focus is now on specially trained Somali police officers and soldiers to take over their country's security. But with concerns over troop payment, constant insecurity, and no clear deadline, this could be a long way off. Catherine Bioranga, BBC News, Somalia.
Now, 2016 has been an important year for electoral upsets, with incumbents unseated in presidential elections in the Gambia and Ghana. Another country that was expected to choose a new leader this year was the Democratic Republic of Congo. But it wasn't to be. The country's electoral commission asked for the presidential elections to be delayed until 2018 due to logistical and budgetary constraints. While one presidential hopeful is businessman Moise Katumbi. He hasn't returned to the DRC since June, when he was convicted of illegal property selling and sentenced to 3 years in prison in absentia. Back in October, Focus on Africa's Sophie Ikenye asked him if his political ambitions were now over.
It's not the end of my political career. I think it's the beginning of my political career. I was already in politics. Now, since I'm a candidate, I think it's a new career starting.
How is your new career starting while you're operating from outside the country?
No, you know, the problem is not to operate outside the country. I came here for a treatment, and after the government allowed me to come for treatment, the same government sentenced me for 3 years of prison with not doing anything. Oh, anyway, this is a fake story. I'm going back because you are asking to have inclusive dialogue, not to have people dying in the country like they killed on the 19th of September last month.
You are going back. Can you confirm that for us? And when are you doing it?
I'm doing it. You see, I'm here, which is helping me also, is to convince everyone to have inclusive dialogue, to have a peaceful transition in our country.
We'll talk about that, but I'm asking you, are you going back to the Democratic Republic of Congo?
Yes.
And when are you going to do that?
When they are going to set the date for the inclusive dialogue.
Well, these inclusive dialogues have been going on, and opposition people have been boycotting them.
No, there is no inclusive dialogue. There is a monologue going on in the Congo. You see, the opposition gave some condition which President Kabila didn't want to respect.
So, by boycotting the talks, do you think that's wise of the opposition?
You didn't boycott any talks.
They are not taking part in the talks.
No.
At least the majority of opposition.
No. The majority of opposition didn't go for the talks because we asked some condition. Even if you go in a talks, I like that dialogue. I need to talk. I need to express, to understand the other person. Now the biggest problem we're having here, they want just to hear one voice.
Staying with election matters, in Ghana, a veteran opposition leader has won the presidential election, a success greeted with jubilation by his supporters. Nana Akufo-Addo hailed his victory in a vote held earlier this month. The BBC's Salim Kikeke has more.
It's third time lucky for Nana Akufo-Addo. After losing in 2008 and 2012, political commentators had suggested that this was his last chance.
We will change Ghana and use all the blessings that the Almighty has bestowed on us to bring prosperity to our people and nation in our time.
Tension was slowly building up here as millions of Ghanaians were waiting eagerly for the final official results. And that moment finally arrived.
It is my duty and my privilege to declare Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo as a president-elect of the Republic of Ghana. Thank you. God bless our homeland Ghana and make our nation greater and stronger.
On hearing the news, there was a sense of relief as hundreds of NPP supporters gathered outside the residence of President-elect to celebrate. I'm outside the President-elect Nana Akufo-Addo's house here in Accra. Some of his supporters have been camping here for days, and this is what victory means to them. Incumbent President John Mahama has conceded. Earlier, he had asked his supporters to be patient, but also said he will respect the results.
I would have cherished an opportunity to do even more, but I respect the will of the Ghanaian people.
He now becomes the first ever president to serve only one term in this West African country since multi-party politics was introduced over 20 years ago. As for Nana Akufo-Addo, the honeymoon period won't last for long. Many people here voted for him, hoping that he will bring change. And that means rescue the falling economy and also deal with social matters, which were key during the election campaigns. Salim Kikeke, BBC News, Accra.
The East African island of Zanzibar is leading the charge in the fight against malaria. The global deadline to eliminate the disease is 2030, but Zanzibar plans to achieve this by next year. Rates of malaria there are already down to almost zero, compared to infection rates of 40% a decade ago. Sami Awami reports on how Zanzibar has achieved this incredible feat.
Mosquitoes prey. Abdulaziz is knocked out by a high fever. This young boy is the only reported case of malaria in the pediatric ward of Zanzibar's main hospital. But he didn't contract the disease here.
Abdulaziz is coming from mainland, which maybe that's why there has a high severe number of the parasite. Also the environment Abdulaziz is coming is maybe swamp area, bushes, which could be one of the reasons that could be a severe malaria.
In the past 3 years, this pediatric ward has seen a dramatic drop in the disease. In the year 2007, they recorded over 100 cases, and now only 91 in total over 3 years. The reason we are seeing such a dramatic change here in Zanzibar is not just down to nets and spraying, but also the treatment. The guidelines here, I'm told, are very strict. Doctors attribute their success to the different combination of malaria drugs used. They believe it has significantly decreased the likelihood of recurrence. With fewer and fewer positive results from this lab every year, the question is, how have they done it?
Increased coverage of the interventions like mosquito net treatment, the case management in general, government commitment, the adherence from the community. Those are some of the factors that heavily contributed, but also the funding from outside.
For the last 10 years, every household in Zanzibar has been sprayed with potent insecticides seasonally. A price worth paying, according to the residents. For most of them, malaria is a thing of the past.
1999. In 1999, I got very severe malaria. I felt like I was losing my mind. They treated me and I got better, but it kept coming back every few months. After we started spraying the house, I stopped getting sick and I haven't had malaria since.
Fatma is determined her children and grandchildren won't suffer like she did. And if Zanzibar continues on this path, the next generation could live without this threat. Sami Awami, BBC News, Zanzibar, Tanzania.
This is a special edition of Focus on Africa from BBC World News with me, Maini Jones. Stay with us because still to come, we'll look back at the student protests that rocked South Africa over the past year. Welcome back to a special end-of-year edition of Focus on Africa on BBC World News. Now, the following interview caused quite a stir in Ghana when we first aired it back in May. It followed a corruption summit here in London where 6 governments, including those of Britain, Nigeria and Afghanistan, agreed to reveal the real owners of all companies operating in their countries. Focus on Africa's Peter Okoche met up with outgoing Ghanaian President John Dramani Mahama, who attended the summit. He asked him what he made of the agreement.
We held the heads of state meeting so that we're all on the same wavelength. Because, of course, one of the things that came up is that there will be no thieves if there were not people receiving the stolen goods. And so it's as much important to look at the sources of corruption and the corruption that takes place, but also look at where, you know, the profits of corruption are kept. And that's why there is that look at the tax havens and where these monies are filched away. Yeah.
I read the Ghanaian press a lot, and you know, there's always talk about growing corruption within the country. Even some of your ministers have agreed. Have you had to prosecute or investigate any of your ministers, any of your close working aides for collecting bribes or for corruption?
One of the things about countries like Ghana is that creating the environment where people are able to speak freely about corruption heightens the perception of corruption. And so it might be that because of the environment in which corruption is discussed, people have a perception that there's an increase in the incidence of corruption.
What about you, Mr. President? Have you been offered a bribe before?
You mean as president?
As John Mahama.
As a human being?
As a person.
any human being in the world would have encountered, corruption in a way, one way or the other, either being offered a bribe or a bribe being demanded from you. What you need to do is to put yourself in a position...
Mr. President, did you take it?
No, I haven't taken a bribe. No, but I'm just going to explain to you. What you need to do is to put yourself in a position where you are not offered a bribe, and that's what I've done. I don't take decisions on procurement. I don't take decisions in respect of anything as president. All that is done at the technical level. And so at the technical level, they decide who should win a contract, and if they want it fair and square, that's it.
Now, the hashtag Fees Must Fall student protest in South Africa dominated headlines this year. They were the biggest student protests to hit the country since the end of apartheid in 1994. The demonstrations started last year after Johannesburg's Wits University suggested it would raise fees by over 10%. The protest that followed forced some of the country's top universities to close and President Zuma to order a year-long freeze on fees. But protests recently erupted again after the government suggested hiking fees in 2017. Protesters now want free education for all students. In October, the BBC's Milton Nkosi went to Wits to speak to some of them.
What you have here is a standoff between the police, who are armed with rubber bullets, tear gas, and they've already fired them, including stun grenades, to try and disperse that crowd of students. The rule today is that students should not be gathering in groups of no more than 15. But look at that crowd there. And today, the decision for the university is whether the students should continue to finish off their studies for 2016 or close indefinitely and lose the year.
The students were here peacefully, and the police started dispersing people with stun grenades and then chasing people down and arresting them. In the morning, they arrested about 5 students. The students are in a retaliatory mood right now.
The government is actually shifting blame to the university managers as opposed to taking responsibility. They've been promising free education. Students need free education.
The students on this side are singing and chanting old anti-apartheid songs. They are demanding that there should be no fees at all for anyone attending university. The government on the other side, it says it does not have enough money to do that. And if it followed the demands of the students, other areas like health and education in primary schools and high schools would suffer.
Ethiopia is one of Africa's fastest growing economies, leading to a boom in infrastructure development, including a brand new urban rail service in the capital, Addis Ababa. The project, which cost almost $500 million, was partly funded by China's Exim Bank. Hundreds of people turned up for September's launch, among them our reporter, Emmanuel Egunza.
Welcoming in Addis Ababa's new urban train system, the first of its kind in sub-Saharan Africa, another example of Chinese-funded projects in this fast-growing economy. It took just 3 years to complete the first phase of this project, and the excitement was clearly visible as the first passengers got on board for the maiden trip around the city.
Wow, if you go outside, you can see how the queue for transport problem. You can see in the rush hours the problem. So for Addis Ababa, it's one step forward.
Next station is Autopista.
I feel good because my country is going to grow up. So also it's the first lady to go the train, so I'm very happy.
This service will be operational 16 hours a day, including weekends. But for now, only one line is operational, with an additional one due for opening next month.
When it becomes fully operational, about 1 million people will be able to use this service on a daily basis, and they will pay fares of between 20 and 40 cents per trip. And this, just to put this into perspective, it will be about 4 to 5 times cheaper than what they will pay on a regular bus or minibus service.
For all the efforts you have put
Authorities here believe it will help in decongesting the capital and provide an efficient and modern transport system for the millions who live here.
If you have traveled in Addis Ababa to go from one point to another, from north to the center, it could take you more than 2.5 hours. We'll do it in 15 minutes. Affordability was not the issue that we're really focused when we started the project. It's reliability, to have an appointment from one end of Addis Ababa to another end, and then you can start your journey knowing that you will arrive on time.
The corporation says the construction doesn't end here. Already the second phase of connecting the capital and adjacent cities is underway as Ethiopia continues its quest to become Africa's undisputed hub. Emmanuel Igunza, BBC News, Addis Ababa.
Now in July, Focus on Africa commissioned 3 poets from the diaspora in the UK to write exclusive pieces for us. This was inspired by BBC music station 1Extra's season on spoken word. We gave our poets the very topical theme of migration. Yomi Shode, a Nigerian-born author living in London, wrote a poem called Johnny Just Come. Let's take a look at it, but just a warning, there's an offensive word in this piece.
Johnny just come. Hair nappy looking with dry, chalk-like partings between his shaky fingers. The west end wind wakes each follicle in his skin saying, welcome. Your life is no longer what it used to be. Johnny has arrived. The only one in his family to do what others couldn't. A pressure so high it's as if from now on he will live each day on a tightrope, and who can blame him? The last time I saw as many white people on TV was the Brit Awards, Tawi, the royal family. In Nigeria, you stare at white people, look at something peculiar. You take selfies, test whether they can pronounce words and laugh at the tongue's rebellion to pepper. So Johnny pinches himself to see if it's real. Johnny, this is real. He knows the world is no safer and his family has him in prayers. Johnny greets everything that breathes. He is stunned. People carrying plastic bags to scoop their dog's mess. Wearing t-shirts showing their chest hairs. Wearing shorts and weather that has them pleading with the gods. How can they do this, he wonders? Their legs like toothpicks, where's the meat for warmth? Johnny just come, holding a bag filled with fruits, a map, African cuisine, and £10. The highest sum of money in his years of life. In Nigeria, holding such a note would make him the man. So in London, he thinks this be big money. But unfortunately, London is far from easy. The air tastes metallic and the map smells like paint. Everything is confusing. Little does he know, but Johnny will learn the culture and swallow his mother tongue. His hair, once snappy, will neaten at the edges. Johnny will have swag. Tasting a strawberry lip gloss on female lips, his excitement will heighten. Oh, you both girl, they like me. He will then truly arrive. But Johnny will grow and be made more aware of his blackness. He might get robbed a couple times, he might get called a nigger. His blackness might attract the attention of gangs, his blackness will intimidate people, his blackness will make him question other people's blackness. Then he'll wonder why he left Nigeria in the first place. Behind closed doors, the police can be just as brutal. Bombs still go off in random places, though not as bloody as home. Not as heart-wrenching as 86 kids being burned alive or 200 plus kids being kidnapped. Maybe he'll carry a knife. But Johnny's not built to injure a man, nor was he born into this world for prison life. He has a mother that cares, and the last thing she wants is for her son to be made a stereotype. One of many words he will learn through his lifetime, Johnny has arrived. And when he returns back to Nigeria, he might get taunted for being black, but not African. Then he'll find himself in limbo. Johnny has arrived. In this odd moment where being an African in England is a cool thing. White folks speak of the banj, sing to Wizkid, culturally appropriate waist beads and native attire. Caribbeans do the shoki as if the dance is their own. His culture is celebrated with every turn he takes. But once in a while, he's reminded that this is not home. Each time his surname is mispronounced, notices a clutch bag, watches footage of these people being called immigrants, watches YouTube clips of go back home to where you come from. Inside, a part of him dies. Inside, he felt as if this was home. Outside, though.
And that's all from this special edition of Focus on Africa. From me, Maini Jones, and the rest of the team, thank you for watching and see you next time.